The research that's gone on in recent years has given us quite a clear picture of where the difficulties might be, okay? So, for example, in the big picture, over time, for youngsters with Down syndrome, their spoken language development and verbal short-term memory skills fall behind their non-verbal understanding. The more time any parent spends playing with their children, reading to their children, talking to their children, the better their development. If you look at typical development, okay, it's all totally interactive. You talk to your baby because they start to point and say, look, look, and then they start to attempt words. Every time they do something, a parent responds. It's very recent research to say exactly what you would expect. If a child with Down syndrome is not talking, they don't get talked to. Recording parents, an American study, recorded parents for 2 12-hour waking days. At four, their babies with Down syndrome were not being talked any more to than they were when they were 9 months old, or rather their 4-year-old toddlers, okay? Because you interact, you know, development is interactive. If the child's not doing things, they don't get the input. It's very difficult to compensate for a child who's silent and not communicating. Yet, of course, a child who's learning more slowly needs more input. What they actually get is less. So there's no way you can just leave this and say, all this knowledge that we have. For all children, interaction matters. For a child with a delay and a disability, the danger is that interaction is reduced. So they don't get the same learning opportunities as a typical child, unless you alert people to think about it. The other children in class will notice that this child doesn't speak quite so clearly and is not quite the same. And really, all you're putting across is this is part of how they are, and it's taking them longer to learn things would be the other thing. It's taking them longer to learn things. We might well have a discussion that we're all different. Some of us have got straight hair, some of us have got curly hair, some of us have got red hair, that we're all born different. And this child was born with something called Down syndrome. We'd use the proper words, and that is why they can't run quite so fast or talk quite so clearly. And that's all you need to say. We're all different. Some of us are tall, some of us are short. Yeah. You don't have to elaborate at 5 and 6. Lots of youngsters with Down syndrome love attention. And they may discover quite quickly that they can get attention in class by disrupting story time if they're only 4 or 5-year-olds and the children are all sitting on the floor listening to a story. The child may discover, of course, if they start to make a noise, it stops the teacher and they get attention. And we would talk to the other children about how they must ignore that. You know, they mustn't laugh at them. They mustn't make it more likely they'll do it tomorrow because it got a reaction. 4-year-olds can understand that. Okay, so and you're changing all children's attitudes, and over time, the children are their best advocates. So in our inclusive system, they move every year with the same class. They're in an age-appropriate class, and the teachers have to be flexible enough to teach that child at a level for them, along with everybody else. And of course, there's a whole range of learning in every single class anyway. But as they move up school, when they move on into high school and so on, it's that peer group are their best advocates. They look after them, make sure they don't get bullied.